What really happened at the ford on the River Unshin? Well, Dagda agus Fáilte. Hi, hello, and welcome. Jon O'Sullivan, Irish Pagan School here. And I have had a request from my community members to read a story that I wrote explaining my perspective and my insight into what actually occurred in that location. Um, for those who don't know, during these run up to the second Battle of Moytura in Ireland's mythological era, there is a pending invasion from Fomorians. And so there's a meeting known as the Meeting of the Men of the Goddess. Nuada, the abdicated king, gathers Gwivnu, Oma, Dagda, sorry, and a number of other notable individuals to try and plan for the forthcoming invasion. The gap in their plan, though, is they don't know where the Fomorians are going to land. And so the Dagda leaves the meeting of the men of the goddess and goes to a place he called Glenetchin. He said he kept a house in Glenetchin. And on his way there, in the ford of the River Unshin, he meets a woman. He watches the woman going through some form of ritual. She's standing with one leg on either side of the river. She's undoing her tresses and she's washing herself. And it says that he couples with her in the ford, in the bed of the river, and after which she tells him the prophecy of where the Fomorians are going to land. And the woman is believed or said to be then the Morrigan, and it's known as the bed of the couple thereafter because they are a couple. So in essence, that's what we have in the mythology. There's some extra wording around it. She promises, in one version, she promises to bring particular ruin to one of the Fomorian war leaders, a guy called Indach the Downen, which he later does, which renames the ford from the ford of the couple to from the bed of the couple to the ford of destruction, because she literally takes the blood out of, and valor from him, which is pretty feckin' metal as far as I'm concerned. But a long time ago, when I started writing all of these stories and exploring the mythology for myself, I had difficulty approaching a retelling of this particular aspect of the Dagda's myth and story because it involves sex. And so some of my own upbringing, my own kind of challenging circumstances and mindset raised in an 80s patriarchal Ireland around sex led me to be very uncomfortable writing the story. But it was one of those stories I had to write. And so I did come to it. And then it's actually in this book here, and this is the version I'm going to read for you there today. It's called The Couple's Ford, and it comes from my Tales of a Dagda Bard, Volume 1. And it is exploring what actually happens in that meeting. So settle in, and I hope you enjoy the story. The Couple's Ford by Anscéla Beag. The morning sunshine warmed him as he lay upon the grass. Arriving in the moments before dawn, as he always had, the Dagda stripped off his clothes and waded into the waist-deep water of the river's depths. As the first rays of the sun's light were captured by the water, he raised it in the bowl of his cupped hands and poured it over his head and face. Breathing in deeply and exhaling slowly with every movement, he repeated the process again and again. The Dagda cleansed his body, and with it his spirit. Standing in the shallows of the bank, he gazed across to its opposite side. Assessing where the earth met the water, he marked his spot, and with a large inhalation, he dove below the river's shimmering surface. Beneath the water's boundary, the world was a different place. Quieter, more fluid place. An area where one thing moved towards the next in a constant, never-ending push and pull, measured in the space of a held breath. Kicking his strong legs, the Dagda reached for the bottom and dug his thick fingers into the earth beneath the water. Anchored there, he took his mark to the earth above the water, and with a bend of his body and a plant of his feet, he pulled. As the mid-morning sun beat down upon the water, the Dagda rose with a gasp to fill his lungs again. It was done. Clambering forward, he heaved his form up onto the shallows of the now forded river from one point to another. Lying on the earth, with the water running over his body, air filling his lungs, skin drying in the warmth of the sun's fire, the Dagda closed his eyes and rested. With a snort and a shudder, he sat upright, mind returning from dream to his body. Squinting, he looked to the sun's position. An hour had passed at the most. Still, she would be here soon. Looking about for a suitable place, his eyes fell upon some heavy brush not far up on the opposite bank. Returning to his discarded shirt and other clothes, he gathered them up, scuffed his feet to the flattened grass to make it stand, and crossed the river using the new ford. Moving to the brush, he circled around it, and finding a suitable spot, crawled beneath its cover, wriggling forward on his gut. The Dagda gained a view of the ford, and settled to wait. She would be here soon. The heat of the sun at its highest was a need to warm her. The flow of the water, clean and clear, to wash her. Her eyes, which always see the ways of change in every glance, will be drawn to this place where the land itself was changed. The Dagda knew all these things when he chose a space for their coupling. It was not long before a shadow flickered by above, and the crow's call announced her approaching presence. The Dagda relaxed his body and made his mind still, imagining himself as small as he could. Letting go of his intent, he allowed his eyes to see all that was there, foregoing thought, judgment, or decision for the sake of the moment. A difficult skill to master, being omnipresent, with no thought of self or worry for the cares of tomorrow, with no part of the mind returning to the vaults of memory. Dissipating his will, the Dagda ceased to be and became only a pair of eyes observing a moment. Into that moment she came, cloaked in the colours of autumn, the hues of orange, yellow, and red, her hair falling from her head in crimson cascade. Skin with the clean, healthy pallor of a fresh snowfall, lips as red as heart's blood, eyes of the deepest blue skies, surveying all around her. Stepping lightly to the water's edge, she stopped and cast her gaze about. Her will rolled out across the space, seeking, searching. Only one who knew her well would have seen the slightest of frowns above her brows, a fraction. The land was changed. His hand had made it so. This she knew. Their meeting and coupling here, where the earth meets the sky, in the surroundings of air and fire, was more than mating. This was their personal moment of balance. The service offered and given, the exchange that would speak to the next year's course. Every year this ritual was met and the requirements satisfied, and yet every year she could not find him before the right moment, as if he did not exist until the ritual needed him to. Never would she say it, but it annoyed and vexed her to so lose track of him. Slipping her arms from her garment, she let it fall to the green of the grass. The time approached, and though she could not find him, she did not doubt his presence. Her face took on a smile at her surety. He always liked to watch. Stepping lightly, she moved forward upon the balls of her feet, her strong legs taking her naked body into the waters of the ford. She moved her warrior's physique with a dancer's grace, lithe muscles moving sinuously, alluring and yet deadly. As the sun reached its highest, giving its warmth to her flesh, she stopped in the middle of the river. There she bent to raise water with her hands. Lifting it to her face, she sipped of it, and then poured it down her head and body. Turning about, she repeated this in the four directions, cleansing her body and with it her spirit. With this done, she came about again, offering the 4 points of the land, the 4 elements, filling each movement with her will. Water of the river, earth of the ford, air of the winds, and fire of the sun. As her will rolled out across the land from that moment, all was in readiness. She cast her gaze about in one last effort to find him, but knew he would not, he would only exist once the call was placed upon him. Come you then, O chieftain of the people? Come you hither in service and in seeking. Fis August Iollas, I call you, and by your name be made present. Dagda. Her voice rang out its clarion call, taking her will with it in all directions at once. The eyes that had watched blinked. The word had been spoken and settled upon him like a mantle, full of power, purpose, and responsibility. The muscles in the body twitched as that which had been just part of the land became separate again. Big, calloused hands placed down upon the earth supported the push of strong arms connected to broad shoulders. The body moved as the will filled it again, and the Dagda rose up from the brush to face her. At the moment his name had left her lips, she had felt him. So named, his will could not be hidden. She was facing the brush as she heard the first rustlings of his movement. Seeing his broad-shouldered body lift up as if out of the earth itself always gave her pause, yet no sign of it did she show upon her face. He moved with a steady grace for one of his size, unhurried and patient. His big, naked, full frame, covered in ruddy bronze skin from a life of labor outdoors, slab-like muscles defined his shoulders and arms, legs and chest, with a heaviness about his waist which spoke of wealth and comfort. His hair hung down about his broad face, his features lined and careworn, where they ran from his brow down to his close-cropped beard. The eyes that met her gaze were the rich dark of the fresh-turned earth, deep and steady. I am here, lady. On behalf of the people, I answer the call. Fis August Iollas, I seek, so is best to offer them service. And what chieftain do you offer in exchange? All know that with knowledge comes power, and with power comes responsibility. The deepest blue of her eyes locked to his brown as their wills met in full at that moment. Push and pull in the water's course, shift and steady on the earth beneath, to and fro in the gusts of air, hot and cold in the fire's heat. They challenged, each testing the other's worth, pushing their full power and focused will against their opposite. As the challenge reached its apex, match for match, equal to equal, he let go and allowed her will to surround and take him. Sinking to a knee in the ford, he lowered his gaze from her and hung his head in submission. In this moment and upon this ford, I offer all that I have, which is all that I am, for the vision and knowledge to best serve my people from this moment on until next we meet upon the boundaries between all things. Moving forward through the water, she approached. Stepping in front of him, standing above his kneeling form, she placed her hand upon his head, resting it there for a moment, allowing time for the act to settle within him. In a sudden movement, she grabbed a fistful of his hair and painfully yanked his head back, face meeting hers, eyes locking again as she sought any resistance within his gaze. Deep in the brown of his eyes, she saw the pain she caused him register, but no resistance came. Using her other hand, she gripped his throat, fingers tight and claw-like, ready to rip the life from him, nails biting deep enough to draw a trickle of his blood. In those eyes she saw his willingness. His life was hers to take should she wish it, and he would not resist. Total and complete submission. His perfect sacrifice. Pushing him over upon his back in the cool water of the ford, she loosed her grip on his throat. Pressing her body down upon his big frame, she brought her lips close to his ear and whispered in a husky tone, "Tell me you want this." His reply was calm and filled with deep, rumbling truth. "I want this, lady." Her smile was triumphant as she clamped her lips around the wound in his throat, sucking to draw a bruise to his flesh and a taste of his blood to her mouth. With her hand she took the tumescent girth of him, and with a firm grip pressed him deep within her, filling her completely and stretching her with a pleasant pain. She owned him, fully consenting to her whims and wants. He was hers to take, and take him she did. As the afternoon wore on, she made use of him, taking taking gratification in his body, satisfaction in his strength and stamina, feeding her wants again and again. As the evening darkness began to exert itself, she was astride him again, facing the west, the water having continually washed the sweat from them and refreshed them. The earth supported and steadied them. The air filled their lungs and carrying their gasps and moans, the sun's fire keeping the chill from their naked flesh. Just as the sun slipped to its set, its light disappearing into darkness, she impaled herself fully upon him, and with their shared deep moan, pleasure racked them both as his life-seed filled her. All colour fled her eyes in a second, filling with blackness. She felt her full power in that moment, without fetter, without rival, using him, using his consent. She took his power in to meet her own, filling her, rushing into her being so that she became everything. Everything that was, is, and will be became hers to see, hers to change, hers to control. Ownership of all of it within her grasp, to take as she saw fit, to create or destroy, total, unchallenged power. What use had she for anything else? What was there of value to anything that was not of her? What was there in all creation that could stop or hinder her? The answer came to her mind, of her own mind, and without provocation. Memories of a pair of earth-brown eyes, a big form kneeling before her. Fis agus Iolaus. There was one thing, and one thing alone that could challenge her. Herself. The words came. From her blood-red lips they fell, speaking of the vision she perceived, of the knowledge she held. There were no questions. There were just the words, spilling and tumbling from her, falling into his awaiting ears. When the words had ceased and all was said, she held there the total, unchallenged power. Creation and destruction, life and death, light and dark. As the choice was his to start, the choice was hers to finish. With a last deep breath, she closed the blackness of her eyes, exhaled fully, and released him. His power left her, flowing back where it came from, back to that big frame, filling those dark eyes. A shudder ran through her body as the full warm heat of him left her, and she slumped forward atop him, full only of herself and completely spent. His arms, when they encircled her, were gentle and warm. One big hand moved slowly to her head, there to lightly stroke her hair. Thank you. The words were soft and sincere, whispered just for her, with warm breath against her face, followed by a small peck of a kiss. She allowed herself to be small. Wrapped in those big arms and warmed by his heat, a happy smile came to her rose-pink lips. Did you get what you need? As the power had left her, so had the memory of what she had seen and said, carried back along the lines of the energy to the universe. Yes, the people shall be prepared and endure because of your gift. As the night began to take hold and the day lose its heat, she snuggled close to him, taking in his heat. She smiled again. They stayed like that until the last light of the day was well gone and the stars had begun to show themselves. A deep shudder ran through him, and a burr for the chill escaped his lips. Let's get out of the water now, lass, before the cold settles any deeper. I warm up pretty quick, but we both know how long it takes for you once the cold gets deep in. She sat up off him and opened her storm grey eyes to meet his deep brown. The smile stayed put as she moved. His big eyes blinked, seeing her so, and his words rumbled out softly to her. You slay me with those eyes of yours, lass. Be glad it's not true, or you would have died many, many years ago. The smile on her reply showed her fondness, but his lined face became sincere, and his next words direct. Oh, I did, and I do. A little part of my resolve dies every time you look at me like this. You will be the end of me some day. Of that I have no doubt. His words were new to her and struck something deep inside with a quivering of apprehension. Grasping hold of her will, she met his sincerity with her own. May that day be a long, long way off. His contented smile took a mischievous tweak. Well, you'd know for sure, one way or the other. Rolling her eyes towards the sky, she punched him hard in his meaty arm, yet she couldn't contain her chuckle. The end. As I said, it was a difficult story to kind of get to as a person who worships the Dagda and had to approach what is a very small section, a very small couple of paragraphs and lines within our ancient mythological text, but it does form a very significant part of the rest of the narrative. Like the Dagda going then to meet the Fomorians as they invade, trying to prevent the conflict, and then, of course, the Morrigan fulfilling on her promise to deal with the king Indech. But in the moment of that exchange, they are uniquely powerful deities in their own right, coming together to figure out how best to drive the narrative and change for their people for the future. I hope you've enjoyed the story. Until next time, look after yourself. Take care. Agus Slán. Goodbye.